This is Time Signatures with Jim Ervin, a podcast and radio program presented by the Capital Area Blues Society in Lansing, Michigan. Most any contemporary musical style can trace its roots back to the blues. Time Signatures explores the blues and its musical connections with captivating interviews, lively discussions, and news from the world of the blues.
You know I'm trying, baby, driving up and down these Michigan roads, yeah.
And now, here he is, your host, Jim Ervin.
Baby, I'm home.
And thank you very much, Parker. We are in studio today. Time Signatures. I'm your host, Jim Ervin, along with my trusty friend and boon companion, Dedalian Lowry.
The guy that does the moral support.
With moral support and pushing the buttons, making sure everything comes together, right?
That's exactly it. That's what I do.
And we are so happy to be joined once again by Mike Skory and Jim Alfredson. We're glad to have you back, guys.
Thanks for having us back.
We haven't decided when we're going to air these. Like we said, we just number them as we go along. It's kind of nice because you can just drop one in here and drop one in there.
Like writing a set list,
Yeah, absolutely.
I've got to ask Jim, what is going through your brain when you're hearing the theme song roll?
I'm glad you asked that question.
Because I'm looking at you, the look on your face. I'm like, what's going through that man's brain right now?
What's funny is, I'm going to get musical here for a second.
Okay.
What's funny is, so we go to the 5 chord, ding, and then the 4 chord was a minor 4. Did you notice that? Mm-hmm. Did I write it that way? I guess I must have.
Okay, so we should clarify that you're the one on the keys there.
Yeah, and
Yes.
I co-wrote that with Freddie. I must have at some point.
Now,
it was probably just a standard.
Is it possibly
5-4-1.
an edit in the song, though?
No, just don't remember playing it that way. But yeah, it makes sense.
Oh, you don't remember playing it that way.
But I must have,
Well,
and it sounds really
creates
cool.
an extra tension.
Yeah, it's really cool.
And you definitely had that questioning look on your face as I'm watching. Like, I'm looking over at you and I'm going, "What is he thinking about?"
I'm thinking,
and
wow.
I knew you were listening to it, going, "What's going on there?"
I'm thinking, wow, when I wrote that, 20 years ago, I was hipper than I thought I was.
I thought you were.
What's cool though is I watch both of you while that was playing, and you're both kind of grooving and jamming. And I remember watching James when that was playing the first time for our first episode, and he was playing the bass. He was playing the air bass while this was going. He's like just jamming away and having a good time at it.
I haven't heard that song probably in 15 years. So
well, the ironic thing is, Dedalian asked me to come up with an intro song, and I pulled out my Root Doctor playlist. I have all 6 of the albums on CD, of course, and then the one is the Yellow album that was given to me on a flash drive by Marge, because you can't find it anywhere.
Now, what's funny is the Yellow one was recorded live. They opened it was somebody pretty big, and they happened to record the set. It was just a 2-track recording from the mixer board, right?
Wow.
It's pretty good.
They took it to Glenn Brown, the genius that he is.
Yeah.
And he did his magic on it, and it sounds good. And then there were years and years that went by, and they didn't record anything. And when I got in the band, I've always been into recording as well, and apprenticed under Glenn Brown and kind of tried to learn his genius. And I kept pushing the guys, like, let's write some original songs, let's record some original songs instead of just doing covers all the time. And, they were like, yeah, okay. And then it wasn't until Greg Nagy got into the band that I had kind of a unified front. And the two of us were like, this is what we're going to do.
Okay.
And this is how we're going to do it. And we just kind of almost forced them into it. And I think the lyrics were all written by Freddie. Freddie's a great lyricist.
Yeah.
He wrote a lot of the lyrics on all that stuff. And I wrote a lot of the music, Greg and James had a good part of it too. And it was a collaborative effort, but it was really fun to get them finally thinking in terms of writing original material.
That's very cool. Well, I wanted to talk about the creative process for your music, because both of you write music, you play music. Let's start with Jim. Talk about your creative process. What do you go through when you start putting music together?
For me, it's all about rhythm. So I get inspired by either a drum groove or a ostinato figure of some kind of bass line or something like that. And that usually pushes me into a certain mood or a certain direction. My biggest hang up for years and years was melody, because I absolutely love melody. And as someone who studied jazz, jazz is all about melody. People say it's about improvisation, but the best improvisation to me is improvising melodies, not just blowing a bunch of notes all over the place. You want something that you can sing along to, So I worked really hard on trying to become better at writing melodies, and it's been a challenge, and I'm still working on it. But yeah, for me, the initial inspiration is usually something rhythmic. I started actually playing keys when I was little, but then I got into drums for a while, and I played drums for quite some time.
So is it the rhythm and the melody that comes first for you, or do you work with lyrics and then work on the melodies?
I've done both.
Okay.
Sometimes there's something specific I want to talk about, so I'll write some stanzas out, and a lot of times they change once the music's written, because you don't want to just shoehorn it in. You want to make it flow. And as someone that loves the blues but also loves different types of music, I'm also looking for a little trick that I can put in, like we were talking about the minor 4 chord in the intro tune. Or on one of Greg Nagy's records, we did a blues, but we did it in 6/4 instead of 4/4.
Okay.
It's a shuffle. So it's like going one extra 2 beats per bar.
Very cool.
And it flows great. And then I think we put some 5 in it just to be jerks. Put a 5/4 measure in. But stuff like that, I'm always looking for like a little trick or a little something to bend your ear.
Mike, I see you nodding your head over there.
Yeah,
Let's talk about your process.
I mean, I might start with a vague rhythm, like a type, shuffle, straight beat. Then I go for the lyrics. I have to figure out how to tell a story about something. And usually I go back in my past and I go, oh, God, remember how crappy I felt that day. I can't really write a story about that, how it really happened. So I write a fake story that tries to find that emotion. Mm-hmm. So then usually the first draft of writing lyrics is like 3 songs worth of words, and then I should try to find a melody and fit them into the measures. Then, it's too many words. So that's the way I like to do it.
What about creative blocks? How do you guys deal with those?
I just go do something else for a while. And sometimes I'll actually not listen to music for weeks, which is hard to do, but it clears the palette, and then you can start fresh and try to wherever it comes from, that inspiration, that cosmic radio wave or whatever it is, you can let that through again. I think it gets blocked by too much consumption.
Mike?
I work better when I have pressure. Like if I have a month to get something done, it's 3 days before it's due to do it. And the same with writing a song. I gotta get that done. Boom, and then I just have to bolt into it 100% until it's done. I do that. It's not the best way to do things, but I do it in almost everything I do.
See, this guy reminds me when I was in my writing class, I was one of those people that always would write the 8-page paper in the last 24 hours because I thrive on pressure.
Pressure, and yes. It's like I wake up.
Yeah.
There's something about that adrenaline, the vibe that deadline is looming over you, that it pushes some creativity out. At the same time, I thought it was interesting that you said that you stop listening to music. Anything creative I do, very often I've found a great way to start the creative juices is just to allow silence. Mm-hmm. And I will just let things be quiet all around me. And I just thought it was interesting that you would do the same with music. And I can relate to both concepts, both ideas, and both make sense.
Yeah.
I mean, it's definitely ways to get creativity going.
I do the same thing sometimes too. It's like
where you wait until that deadline comes
the last
out.
minute, and you're like, oh, I guess I should work on this now.
I think that also might be human nature. I'm just guessing.
But I think the funny thing is, my eldest daughter, she's at Michigan State now. She's a French horn major. She's incredible. And during the pandemic, with the online schooling, she was in an AP psychology class, and they were doing a little section on ADHD. And the teacher put up the markers of people, you just raised your hand. And it was like 9 different markers that, like, you might have ADHD if you do this, if you do this, if you do this. And she came downstairs, she was crying. She's like, Mom, Dad, I think I have ADHD. I think I finally figured out what's wrong with me. We're like, well, there's nothing wrong with you per se, but
just have to learn to use it.
Yeah. So she figured that out, and then she's at Michigan State now, like I said, and she's on a very low grade medication that she only takes when she really needs to focus. Like, I need to study for this exam. Yeah. I need to write this paper. I'll take this little bit of medication, and it helps her focus. She said, Dad, it's like all the different voices in my head, Not,
No, I know exactly
you
what
know what I
you're
mean? Like
talking
all the
about.
different thought process, all the different threads get turned off, and I can actually just focus on this one thing.
My
I'm like,
son
oh,
does-
wow, what's that like? And she goes, Dad, I think you might have ADHD too. Did you think?
My son described it as 1,000 TVs.
Yeah.
Huh.
And that's he also has ADHD.
She said that she read a study that 90% of musicians have ADHD.
Well, I
I'm
guess
it
that's
makes
good
sense.
news for me because I am musically inclined.
And creative people in general. So not just musicians, but artists and poets and painters, and it's just part of the process, I think.
That's why I like fixing stuff.
Yeah.
Because it's just, I got to focus on.
Yeah.
So then, but my routine is still, my personality is the same. I'll be sitting, I got things, it's been here 3 weeks. Still don't know why it's not working. Still don't know why, I got to get into it. And then I'll have to bury into it.
Who was it that was
Just like
working
this.
on the amp and you found that the speaker was dead? Was it
That
you?
was mine, yeah.
Yeah, he had an amplifier and ended up, it was just the speaker. The amp had fallen on the floor.
The speaker cracked in half, yeah.
There you go. The
magnet.
The magnet.
Oh, it fell off, yeah.
Yeah.
But the thing about the mic we mentioned on the last podcast that I was fixing a microphone, here's the problem with that is that I'll get so hyper focused on that I can't do anything else. So when I started that microphone repair, it was about 2:00 in the afternoon. Worked on it for a while, took a break, did some stuff with the kids, picked daughters up and blah, blah, blah. Came back to it about 5:00, came upstairs, had dinner at 6, came back down, started working on it again. Got stuck, couldn't figure out what was wrong with it. Decided to go do something else for about 2 hours. Meanwhile, it's in my brain going around and around and around and around. I'm like seeing schematics in my head. Like, why isn't this working? Where's this voltage going? What, blah, blah, blah. Suddenly, it's almost like the same inspiration you get when you write a song. All of a sudden, this light goes off, and you're like,
Right.
I should check this. I go and check it. That's the problem. To me, that's the same as writing music, though, because you'll work on it, and you'll
Sure.
get to a point where you're stuck, and you're like, I don't know how to go where I'm supposed to go this next verse or this next chord or something like that. And so you just let it sit for a while, let your brain chew on it in the background, and then all of a sudden, oh, I should do this. And sometimes it takes hours, sometimes it takes days, sometimes it takes weeks.
Certainly.
You have to let it resolve. I don't know if you probably had this one where you write something, you write some lyrics. For me, it's like lyrics, and they don't fit.
Yeah.
You know it. Yet you're so, man, it was kind of cool the way I said that. Or like the words, you know what I mean? You're sold on it. So you like force, kind of, I don't know if I force the melody and force the words close here. You figure out a way to try to cheat it. But in the end, you go, that I knew that line was a problem. I knew it was a problem.
And you have to get rid of it, right?
Yeah, or
the
really,
line or move it out.
move it, or just write a different line that works
Yep.
or something. You just got to get rid of it. It ain't going to work. Or to save it and use it for another song. I guess it was that good. But.
The worst part, though, is when you record it on a record thinking I solved it, then you come and you hear it a couple of years later and you're like, oh, why didn't I fix that? That's terrible. My wife is a fine artist. She's a painter, and she said in college they taught her that a painting is never finished. It's just abandoned.
That's a good
And
one.
I think music is the same way. It's like at some point you just have to say, okay, I got to move on and do something else. Because you could just sit there, and especially nowadays with the technology that we have, with computers and recording at home and stuff, you can sit there for 20 years and work on one song and just keep tweaking it. Oh, let's try this. Let's try this. Let's try that.
Do either of you consider yourself a perfectionist?
I think if I let myself go down that
looking
pathway,
at his face.
yes.
Anyway, sorry, Jim.
If I let myself go down that pathway, yes, I've learned how not to do that because
This is not an intervention, by the way.
no. It's
No, but it's an interesting thing from a musician's perspective, especially with what you just said.
Yeah.
A painting is just abandoned.
Yeah.
And a song's got to be the same way. There's
It
a
is.
point where you have to accept this is where it's at.
Yeah.
This is okay.
Yeah.
This is good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mike?
I am on certain things. Certain things just, and they're usually related with the band. Like especially if I'm singing it, I like it a certain way, and that's a hard thing. It's hard for me to do it. I mean, I try to do it. That's why I played a lot because I would try to do it, but then when I'm the singer and then you don't want to be rude. Well,
Right.
sometimes you do, but she goes, "Why'd you change the beat there? Why'd you change it? We changed chords. You haven't changed the beat." That's when I get.
I completely get that.
Yeah.
I do. I understand that. Where you're used to hearing it a certain way. It's just like, when I hear something and I go to a concert and somebody just changes it and you go, what are you doing? Well, it's because it's live.
Yeah.
They were improvising. But
Sure.
Yeah, and I don't. Yeah, it's if this guy's just doing a solo, I don't care what they do. You know,
Well, I would
when
imagine.
I have to bounce from it, that's when I like it predictable.
I'm not a musician myself, but I would imagine from a musician's perspective, in order to keep that song fresh for you, you have to kind of change it up a little bit when you're playing it so many times, yes?
Yes and no. I understand where the fans are coming from. If you have a song that the fans adore, and it's like your one-hit wonder or whatever it is, you know, you kind of have to play it the way they want to hear it. Like, let's talk about Larry McCray and Soulshine. I mean, he's been playing that song for 30-some years. And he plays it the same way every time. I mean, he plays something different solo-wise, but the form, the feel is the same, and that's what people want to hear. I don't think for those type of things, you don't want to change it up too much.
When Fred would do God Bless the Child, it better be just like that.
Yeah.
And the change-up might come at the end of the song because he goes into not a scat, but he goes into some ad lib.
Yeah.
So that might change, and that's plenty of change. I think sometimes we think to change it takes so much, and just a little bit of a thing. It's something new, something different.
Sure.
Or he might let the guys noodle at the beginning of the song. But when it got to the part, it's where it had to be.
Yeah.
guys, I want to shift gears just a little bit here. Talk about some of the musicians that you've shared the stage with, some of the better known musicians over the last 20, 30, 40 years. Jim, I'll start with you because I can see you're thinking over there.
Yeah, I'm trying to. I have such a horrible memory. But some of the bands that Root Doctor opened up for back in the day, we opened up for Leonard Skinner, which was kind of fun. You wouldn't think a blues band would work with a Leonard Skinner crowd. They did actually love us. It was a good crowd. And the keyboard player for Leonard Skinner was the original guy, Billy Payne. He's amazing. He was amazing. I sat backstage and watched him. His entire rig was white. He had a white B3, a white grand piano, white synthesizer. It was great. It was awesome. And then we opened up for Kool and the Gang one year, which was mind-blowing. And then I got to hang out with Greg Allman and Derek Trucks and the Allman Brothers because James Williams from Root Doctor, his brother, played with the Allman Brothers.
Yes.
His brother Lamar. So every time they would come to town, he would get us tickets, and one time we went backstage and hung out, and Greg Allman was a trip. I introduced myself, told him I played B3, and he's like, "That's cool, kid," and then he just walked off. Like, cool, thanks.
Get away, kid, you bothering me.
Yeah. But once I got on the road, I played with a bunch of different people. Taj Mahal one time on the Blues Cruise, which was a total treat. He's one of my favorites of all time. Got to play with the Holmes brothers on that cruise, Joan Osborne. I'm trying to think of who else. In the jazz world, I played with a lot of really cool heavies like David Sanborn, Branford Marsalis. I mean, just through Michigan State, when I was there, we got to play with a lot of those guys. And the trumpet player, Brecker brothers, Michael and what's his brother's name? He's still around. Randy Brecker.
Hey,
there it is.
Boing, boing. Randy Brecker. I have a good story about that. And so he came to the Brevard Music Center. I was teaching there for a couple summers, thanks to Michael Dees, the professor of jazz trombone at Michigan State. He texted me. He's like, "Hey, Randy's here, and I want you to meet him." And for one reason or another, I thought I'd be a smart ass, and I went out to meet him. And Michael's like, "Hey, Randy, this is Jim Alfredson, Randy Brecker." I'm like, "Randy Brecker?" I'm like, "Man, I've never heard of you." And he got this look on his face like, "Who the heck is this guy?" And I said, "Oh, I'm just kidding. I'm a really big fan. I love your work." And I don't think he took it as a joke, though. He was like kind of stoic.
I think that'd be the time for "Get away, kid. You're bothering me."
Yeah, exactly.
Very cool.
Yeah, it's been pretty amazing. The thing I love about playing with that caliber of musician is normally I'm not nervous about it. I just I do what I do, and they'll either like it or they won't. So I don't really worry about it. But the nice thing about playing with a caliber of that musician is that it forces you to up your own ability,
Sure,
like instantly. And that's the best thing about music is you want to get to the point where you know your instrument enough that you can step outside of your comfort zone a little bit and still be okay. Or as Herbie Hancock would say, you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable.
There you go.
And push things a little bit. That's what I love about it.
Mike, how about you, man?
You know, the only time I really did much of that was in probably the late 70s.
Okay.
This was well before Root Doctor. But we had a band. It was called Blue Money. And, you know, of course, we thought we were going to the top. And we did a couple of albums, records. We didn't have CDs then.
Right.
And after the second one, we had some kind of manager. And he finagled us to be the warm-up act. We went to Van Andel a couple times and the big theater downtown Flint, places like that. We were always the warm-up band for no pay. So, and usually we would just sit around and go, man, we're better than those guys. Man, we're better than those guys. It was just a completely different thing. Yeah. But it was still fun. It was exciting. We didn't want anybody to see that we had no road crew, so we had changes of clothes. We'd wear all black, take our equipment out to the stage, and run back off and put on bright colored. We'd play and then hopefully get cheered. We come and then put our black clothes back on and then run back out and get our equipment.
Guys, tell me about your favorite performance of all time. Go back in your mind real quick.
Oh, boy.
I'm getting a furrowed brow from Mike over here.
I can barely remember them.
Yeah. There wasn't something that just jumped right out at you?
Oh, yeah, there is. And again, it was a different band. I played with a singer named Lisa Smith, and we had a 4-piece band, and I was playing left-hand bass. And we did our thing, you know. The band was good. Mm-hmm. So one year we were going to be on the Jazz Fest, and she wanted to learn Spain.
Ooh, boy.
I went, yeah. I don't know, you know. I don't know. So we learned it. I learned it the best I could from the real book and practice, and I would just sit there for like hours and put the metronome or the record. And we had a rehearsal because we were worried about it. Just awful. It's a train wreck. Just a train wreck. Ed was playing guitar. Ed Smith was playing guitar, so luckily. She goes, well, you guys will have to just get your heads together because we're doing it.
Wow.
Oh, okay. And it worked. We never did song again. I'm gonna try to do that Latin bass here, you know. With it worked somehow. It just worked. Must have been the excitement of the big PA or something, or we were scared and we did it and it worked, and we were so happy. I was so happy. We are never going to play that song again.
Man.
And Jim, how about you?
That's a really tough one. I think one of the most fun gigs I've ever had was when I first joined Janema Magnus and we played the Portland Blues Festival in Portland, Oregon. And the way they had it set up, they had a stage on one end and then a stage on the other, and in between was probably about 60 to 70,000 people.
Wow.
It was huge. And so they'd have an act on one stage, and then everybody literally would just turn around and face the other stage, and they'd have an act on that stage, and then they'd turn around. And
so kind of like Blues Fest, but a lot closer.
Kind of like Blues Fest, but huge. I mean, just absolutely enormous.
Wow.
And before we went on, I was new to all this. I was new to playing in front of that many people. And before we went on, Janema said to me, "Okay, you're not playing for the person in front of you. You're playing for those people way back there. So bring it."
Perspective, yeah.
I'm like, okay. And it's on YouTube. And sometimes I go back and I watch that. And I'm like, dang, we were killing that day. We really socked it to them. It was fun.
I love her philosophy and approach there. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I learned a lot from her. You know, my time in Root Doctor prepared me for that gig really well because I learned how to play behind a singer due to playing with Freddie.
That's a whole different
It's
thing.
a whole different ballgame. And the keyboard player that she had, so she had a guy for a long time, and then he left the band, and then she had an interim guy, and he was young and green and really good, but he had no experience playing behind a singer. And so she had hired me to play, before she had gotten that interim guy, she had hired me to play a couple gigs in the Midwest. And then in the meantime, she had gotten him, and she honored those gigs, which was really nice of her to do, that she had booked with me. And so she had been on the road with this kid for a couple months, and then she comes to the Midwest, and I play these 4 gigs with her. And after those 4 gigs, they called me up. They're like, "Do you want the gig?" And I said, "What happened to so and so?" They're like, "Oh, he's great, but he just doesn't know how to play behind the singer. He just hadn't had that experience. He was stepping all over, and he was soloing for too long. He was playing too loud." And I'm like, "Thank you, Freddie, because you taught me how not to do that."
Absolutely.
Fred, he was a good teacher. He would tell you.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Sometimes we would, we'd be playing, and he might pull something out. Oh, I want to play this. I want to play this. Okay, great. I knew it because I just keep learning songs. And then sometime the band would go in, and it's always going to be a wrong chord. But I would telegraph that. I'd go, oh. But one day he just let me have it. Mike, they don't know. You told them. You must get a big sign. Just play 2 notes or play a note till the bad part ends. They don't know. Smile through it.
Don't tell the audience.
The worse it is, the
Mm-hmm.
more. I went, okay, that's it. I'll do it. There's another guy. The first time I really played with a singer, this is so long in the past. His name was Danny Hernandez.
Oh yeah.
And that was the first one of the, not the first band, but the first band that worked all the time, every minute of every day. And he was the singer and the bass player, and you had to watch him all the time.
Wow.
And he would not. You don't know what he was going to do. Because, again, he had so many songs rattling around, plus he had the power of the bass, you know. So he might, if things weren't going great at the bar, the last set might be just a minute and a half of 30 songs. Just, okay, I got it. Okay. He was good. He would do whatever it took to entertain the crowd. He would just do it.
Absolutely.
He was a good guy to work with.
Well, I want to thank both of you for being here for this episode. We are hopefully going to be able to get another one in. So until next time, we appreciate you being here. Thanks so much. And we will see you on the next edition of Time Signatures.
This has been Time Signatures with Jim Ervin, presented by the Capital Area Blues Society in Lansing, Michigan. For more information on cabs, visit capitalareablues.org. You can find this episode and past episodes at lccconnect.org. The Time Signatures theme song, Michigan Roads, is used by permission and was written by Root Doctor, featuring Freddie Cunningham.
You know I'm trying, baby, driving up and down these Michigan roads, yeah.
Until next time, keep on keeping the blues alive.
Baby, I'm